I'll tell you, we've had a great conference, and I think it's a reflection of the fact that, as I said earlier, more than 250 mayors from all across the nation have come to call on our nation's leaders to do the most important thing that they could do right now, and that's putting people back to work, partnering with cities to make the investments in our roads, our highways, our schools, our bridges, our ports, and our airports. I couldn't be prouder to have been just a few moments ago with the Freedom to Marry press conference, some 80 mayors from across the country, and hearing some of those stories, you couldn't help but be inspired by the courage, by the steadfast commitment to justice and liberty that so many of our mayors have demonstrated. Earlier today we got to hear from Rahm Emanuel. I'm a big fan, as you heard, and of course, Bill Daley before him. We've heard from Tom Menino. These are some of the great mayors of the United States of America. When we talk about the metro economies, that we generate 90% of the GDP of the nation, the 85% of the jobs. If you took the top 10 economies, metropolitan areas, we'd have a GDP $5 trillion. Only China at $5.9 trillion, and the United States of America at $14.9 trillion are bigger. If you took three of them, New York, Chicago, and LA, our GDP is roughly the size of France, the fifth largest economy in the world. And so as cities go, so go the nation. You've heard us say that. But as New York goes, let's be clear, they drive so much of the wealth creation in our nation. This opportunity to hear from a man that I've said for a long time is one of America's great mayors. I mean, when I think about the issues that Michael Bloomberg has been involved in, when I think about the courage that he's had to take on some of these tough issues, I can tell you that across the board, this is a man who's led the way. But I'm looking at, I was going off script, and I'm looking at that I didn't introduce the Bonnet Fellows who are here today. So let me take a moment. I believe that the Bonnet Fellows are here with us. And I've had a great experience. Where are they? Right here to my left. Excuse me. I apologize. I got carried away here and didn't read the teleprompter. The Bonnet Fellows are graduates from New York University, NYU, and UCLA, the University of Michigan. They're studying and serving in city government. I've had more than a few of them in my office and administration. And let's ask them to rise, and so that we could recognize these outstanding young men and women who will be our future leaders. But thank you, and I'm sorry. We got two of them, two tables full. There you go. I mentioned the issues that Michael has been involved in, and we've said for some time, one of the great things about this conference is that we can learn from one another. And while Michael's on the biggest stage, and I've said many times I'm on a big stage as well, we can learn from the smallest cities, and we do. And I can tell you that I've learned a lot from Michael Bloomberg when it comes to advancing the arts, investing in infrastructure. Michael Bloomberg has been an absolute leader. When it comes to reforming New York's school system, this is a man who has been focused and committed to the idea that this issue of educating our kids, particularly in our metropolitan and our urban areas, is the economic issue of our time, the democracy issue of our time, and the civil rights issue of our time. And he's taken on virtually anyone who would stand for the proposition that our kids can't learn, that the kids of the working poor can't excel like the kids who come from affluent communities. He's been a man who's been dedicated to developing new ideas and creative solutions to move his city forward. Please help me in welcoming my friend, Mayor Michael Bloomberg. And it's Villaraigosa.
Mayor Villaraigosa, gracias. And thank you for that kind introduction. Good morning to everyone. It is a pleasure to be here. I hope all of you had a happy New Year. Personally, I had a great time with my good friend Lady Gaga in Times Square.
You did?
I would tell you about it, Antonio, but I never kiss and tell. Let me start by dispelling another rumor, and that is there is no truth to the speculation that the only reason I came here was to collect on the bet I made with Green Bay Mayor Jim Schmidt on the Packers-Giants game. But if anybody is hungry for some Wisconsin cheddar, I'm the man to see. Go Giants! Now, the real reason I'm here, and I want to thank Tom Cochran for the invitation, is to discuss an issue with all of you that I believe has reached a critical juncture in New York and all around the country, and that is education reform. It really is astonishing how little is being said about our schools on the campaign trail, because I think everyone knows, not just here, everyone in this country knows education is a top concern. It is a top concern for parents, and it's a top concern for students. It affects them personally, but it has to be a top concern for those of us who aren't students or don't have children going to school, because it affects the country's future in some very profound ways. These are the people who are going to vote. These are the people who are going to take care of us when we're older, those young people in schools. So you just can't walk away from what's going on in the schools. All of us have seen the reports on how American schools stack up against schools in other developed countries. If you don't know the numbers, when it comes to math and science, we are near the bottom of the pack. And when it comes to literacy, the best you can say is we are average. Now take a look at our economy and look at how many high-skilled jobs are available today that companies just can't fill, even though there is something like 13 million unemployed Americans. The truth of the matter is those 13 million don't have the skills required for those jobs. And now look at what's happening to the middle class. Real wages have been stagnating for years, and too many young people are unable to find the career path that lead them to the American dream. Is there a connection between these three developments? I don't think there's any doubt about it. There is no doubt that if we are going to remain the world's economic superpower, we have to stop taking our success for granted. As the global economy continues to move from one driven by manual labor to one driven by knowledge and ideas, we have to move with it. As a matter of fact, we have to lead that change. And the simple fact is we just cannot do that without outstanding public schools. Now, when I was elected mayor 10 years ago, the big city public school system of New York had been failing for decades, and very little was being done about it. And that was true for virtually every city in this country. But over the decade, mayors and governors around the country have led the charge for reform, overhauling dysfunctional school governance structures, increasing the number of charter schools, helping parents get more information about schools, and holding schools accountable for success. Mayors like A.C. Wharton in Memphis, David Bing in Detroit, Rich Daley, and now Rahm Emanuel in Chicago, Kevin Johnson, and incidentally his wife, in Sacramento, Antonio in Los Angeles, and one of the nation's strongest champions of charter schools, Mayor Cory Booker. Over the past decade, thanks to leadership of so many of these mayors and others, the number of students enrolled in charter schools has more than tripled. And I'm proud to say a good portion of that growth has come in New York City. We've opened 139 new charter schools in our city, and we've created more than 500 new small schools, non-charters, but ones that give parents of kids top quality options. Parents and students both deserve that. And school choice is an important way to hold schools accountable for success, because when people vote with their feet, you know that it's real and it's pretty obvious which direction they are going. As much progress as cities have made, however, in turning around broken school systems, I think it's fair to say we all know we have an enormous ways still to go. The fact is also that the work is only going to get harder, because in New York and all around the country, the most promising and successful educational reforms are under attack from ideologues on both the right and the left. I remember a conversation I once had with Bill Bennett. He was the former education secretary under President Bush number 41. I asked him, I said, Bill, you're a smart guy. Why don't we have standardized national testing? And he said, and I've never forgotten this, just to show you how smart he still is, he said, because the right will never accept anything with the word national in it, and the left will never accept anything with the word testing in it. And unfortunately, I think that's still true. Ideologues on the right are blocking national standards that would allow parents in one district to see how their children are doing compared to students in another district, or another city, or another state, or compared to students in other countries who our kids are going to be competing with. You want accountability? That's what accountability really is. I understand education is a local issue, and localities should have flexibility in running their schools. But to do that, we still can have national standards that holds everyone accountable for success and let us see where we stand. If you can't measure it, you can't fix it. We have a saying in New York, in God we trust, but everyone else bring data. And we don't have the data that we need to know how well our schools are doing in each place. Now, the good news is that we're moving closer to that goal through something called Common Core Standards, a common standard that nearly every state is voluntarily adopting and that the Obama administration, I'm happy to say, strongly supports. However, just as the ideologues on the right are resisting accountability through national testing, ideologues on the left are resisting accountability through any testing. But without testing, there is no accountability. And without accountability, we're right back to where we were 10 years ago, with schools failing and no one doing anything about it. People say, oh, I don't want our kids subject to high-stakes testing in school. Let me tell you about the high-stakes testing that they're about to face. When they get out of school, it's how you get a job, how you make a decision on who you're going to live with, what you do. When it's in school, you have to make some really tough decisions. Do you hang out with that gang or do you not? Do you get pregnant when you're unwed or not? Do you do drugs or don't you? Those are as high-stake tests as I have ever heard of. And our kids are subject to those tests. They have to answer those questions every day. So to ask them whether they can read or write is hardly something that is going to put undue stress on them. But unless we find out whether they can do math or read or write, we can't improve the quality of the education. We can't help each student with the things that that particular student needs to focus on. And now there are ideologues on the left who believe that testing is okay as long as teachers can't be removed from the classroom if the students continue to fail to make progress. And that's the biggest issue we're facing in New York City, as a matter of fact. 2 years ago, we won Race to the Top funding, in part because our state legislature passed a law requiring all teachers to be rigorously evaluated based on student achievement metrics. And it was supposed to give us the ability to identify ineffective teachers so that we can help those teachers become effective, or if they can't become effective, move them out. Our school system has to be run for the kids, not for the people that work in the system. We're there to educate. And our legislature, thank you, our legislature did what we asked them to do. They passed that law. Unfortunately, they put in a little thing, one giant roadblock. It was anything but little, because it was what really, in the end, made the difference. It gave the local unions the authority to veto any evaluation plan. And so now here we are 2 years later, and not a single district in New York State has an evaluation program. Instead, we continue to have a pass-fail system with a 98% passing rate. Now think about it. Our students don't have the luxury of pass-fail, and neither do you or I, people in other professions who have to make a living to feed their families, and neither should our teachers. We have to raise the bar for them, just as we're doing for our students. Nobody thinks that 98% of any group is in the top 30 or 40%, or the top 50%, or the top 70%, by definition. We have to raise the standards. We have to help those at the bottom, and if they can't do the job, we have to replace them. And the only ways we are going to reform public education is doing exactly that. I don't mean just tinkering around the edges. I mean really transforming it into a system of excellence, and to put the needs of the students first. That has been my message in New York, and I'm happy to say it is the message that our new governor, Andrew Cuomo, is delivering as well. Andrew Cuomo has been governor for a year, and he could not have, in the last few weeks, been more strongly in favor of making sure that we put an effective evaluation system in, that we help those teachers that need help, and if those teachers that can't perform in the classroom and help our students get moved out. Governor Cuomo and I both strongly support the right to organize and bargain. I've come out 1,000 times and said, I don't agree with Wisconsin. I think if people want to organize, they have a right to organize. But we in government, and we the citizens who pay for it, have to decide what we're willing to do and what we're not willing to do. And I think what we should not be willing to do is to have teachers who are ineffective in the classroom, because we are leaving a bunch of our kids out in the cold without the skills they're going to need to be self-supporting, and without the schools, the education they need to participate in the great American dream. Our job is to do what's right for our children. And I have yet to hear how it's good for children to make it harder to remove ineffective teachers from the classroom. It is not. And when it comes to negotiating an evaluation plan, I can just promise you we will not sacrifice our children's future by giving in on that point. The system has to be run for the people that we are here to serve. Now, the attacks on education by ideologues on the right and on the left must be met and must be fended off by the sensible center. And that is the people that you are here with today, the mayors. Mayors are pragmatists and problem solvers, not ideologues. They don't have the luxury of being on both sides of an issue. They have to be explicit as to where they stand. They can't say, well, I voted for it, but I didn't vote to fund it. They have to go out there every day. Somebody did that. It's like saying I'm pro-choice but not for women. Mayors are where the action is. Mayors are where the rubber hits the road. Mayors do things. They pick up the garbage and they educate the kids and they keep crime down. They make their city's economics work and attract people and increase life expectancy and do all the things that we would want them to do. And they are expected to make hard-headed decisions based on the facts and not on special political interests. And that's what I think the mayors have done on so many issues, from illegal guns to immigration to climate change. And that's what we have to do on education, including accountability measures like teacher evaluations and sensible plans to find either improve or find other careers for those teachers who just aren't getting their students to move ahead and getting what they need, the students need, to participate in the great American dream. I spoke at Martin Luther King Day a number of different places, and I said all of the battles are meaningless if our children don't have the skills to understand and to participate and to be a part of the great American dream. Education is one of the basic civil rights. The reason that teacher evaluations are so important is that all the best research tells us that the single most important factor affecting a student's progress is the effectiveness of the classroom teacher. And there was a recent study that got a lot of press about 2-3 weeks ago by Harvard and Columbia economists who found students with ineffective teachers are less likely to become pregnant, more likely to go to college, and more likely to get high-paying jobs. Now, I think all of us just knew that intuitively before. But would anyone here want their child to be in a classroom with an ineffective teacher? Of course not. We know how important great teachers are, and we remember them from our own lives. Great teachers make an enormous difference, and if we expect the American school system to rise from the middle of the pack to the top, the only ways that we are going to get there is with great teachers leading the way. And the only way that will happen is if we do more to recruit, reward, and retain great teachers and replace ineffective ones. Let me just take 2 seconds about what we are doing in New York. Next to being a parent, I think it's fair to say teaching is probably the most important job there is today. I have enormous respect for teachers and the extraordinary personal investments they make in their students. Over the past 10 years, I've worked as hard as I can to invest in them. By expanding professional development, we've raised their base salaries by 43% in the last 10 years. A starting teacher in New York City now makes $45,000, and a veteran teacher can make well over $100,000. But many students, well, either you care or you got to put your money where your mouth is. We have, in the last 10 years, all of the agencies in New York City collectively, on average, have increased their compensation by 32%. Inflation during that period was 33%. But teachers' incomes have gone up 105%. Why? Because our teachers were underpaid, we were losing them to the suburbs, and I can't think of any better investment we can make than to have a better teacher in front of every single child at the front. Many students graduating from college today have college loans. They could not that could lead them to cross teaching off of their list of possible careers. We've looked at that and said, what can we do to make more teachers apply to our school system? We can't let it happen that they go elsewhere simply because they've got college loans that they have to repay. And we can't let our top students who want to be teachers decide that they can't afford it. So one of the programs we are in the process of instituting in New York City is we proposed an incentive to anyone who finishes college around the country in the top tier of the class. Come teach in New York City public schools. And if you commit to stay, we'll pay off up to $25,000 of your student loans. Our teachers deserve it, and so do our children. That's the recruitment. We also have to worry about retaining the best teachers by offering them a big raise. You know, teachers today have lots of options. If you're a good teacher, you're worth a lot of money in the private sector, not just as a teacher, but in many careers. And here in Washington, teachers were given a choice to decide for themselves if they wanted a contract that would pay them an extra $25,000 a year if they were rated effective. And guess what they did here in Washington, D.C.? The teachers said yes. They wanted to be rewarded for this success, just like any other person in any other job. Why anybody's surprised about that, I don't know. We all want recognition and respect. And also, it'd be nice if we could get some money so we can enjoy more things. And the harder we work and the better job we do, I think most people would say, the better you should be rewarded. Teachers' unions, unfortunately, have historically opposed merit pay. But more and more teachers today, I think, are asking why. And when they're given a voice like they did here in Washington, D.C., they said yes. Now, by all accounts, these raises have been essential to keeping effective teachers from moving out of the D.C. public school system. I think the question is, if imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, Mayor Gray should be very flattered, because I'm telling you that in New York City, we want to make the same type of offer to our teachers. And we proposed the following deal for all of our teachers. If you are rated highly effective for 2 consecutive years, we will hike your salary by $20,000 a year. Once again, our teachers deserve that, and so do our children. It is, however, something that we have to bargain with the teachers' union. And the real question is going to be, will the teachers' union stand in the way of their most effective members being rewarded for all of their work? I think this is an idea whose time has come, and I'm confident that if the teachers are allowed to decide the matter for themselves, they'll support it in New York City just the way they did here in Washington, D.C. Now, as much as these issues, the battle for these issues have gone on, we've already won the most important battle of all, and that is the battle for public expectations. I remember 10 years ago, people said, well, you can't fix the schools until you cure poverty. Our schools chancellor then, Joel Klein, said to me, you know, they all have it exactly the wrong way. You can't cure poverty until you fix our schools. Too many people were resigned to the reality of bad schools, just as they once were resigned to the reality of high crime rates. But in New York City in the 1990s, mayors like Giuliani showed the world that high crime is not inevitable, that you could make the streets safer if you used data-driven strategies and held people accountable for the results. Mayor Giuliani dramatically cut crime in New York City, and we've cut it another 35% since we've taken office. Today, New Yorkers expect the streets to be the safest of any big city in the country. And voters, I think, will not elect any future mayor who isn't 110% committed to that goal. Well, social programs like crime and failing schools are to some extent self-fulfilling prophecies. If you expect the worst, you get the worst. But if you expect to do better, you can do better. And we're willing to take on the ideologues and the special interests to find comfort in the status quo. That's certainly been our experience in New York City. When I first came into office, the status quo in education was about as bad as it could get. Graduation rates had been stuck at below 50% for decades. School crime was the norm. Social promotions was standard. Kids were promoted regardless of whether they learned anything. And hiring in the school was often based more on political connections than merit. We refused to accept any of that. We refused to accept, as President Bush what once called it, the soft bigotry of low expectations. We expected more of our students, and that meant expecting more of the adults that were in charge as well. So back then, working with the state legislature, we abolished the broken Board of Education and handed control over the schools to a chancellor appointed by and serving at the pleasure of the mayor. And by raising standards and injecting accountability into schools, we've raised graduation rates 40%, I'm happy to say, since 2005. And if you want to know how good that is, it's compared to 8% in the rest of the state, and the reason we use that comparison is all of the kids in New York State take exactly the same test. We've cut the dropout rate in school crime in half. We've increased the number of students taking advanced placement classes and enrolling in college. I think it's fair to say, by almost any measure, students are doing better and our school system is headed in the right direction. And today, parents expect their kids' schools to be first-rate. And more parents, incidentally, are staying in our city rather than moving to the suburbs because of the changed expectation. Now, I realize that many mayors don't control their own school system, but we do have voices, and we have the ears of other elected officials, and we have the parents as our constituents who expect us to stand up for their kids. So let me conclude by saying we're all in this together. Just as we've seen on many issues, when mayors stand together and speak together, we put problem solving over ideology. We can make an enormous difference. And if we stand together on school reform, we can make sure that our kids nationwide get the education they need to keep the American dream alive in this new century and beyond. Let's go get it. Thank you.
Great job. I tell you, I can't tell you how much I've looked to what Mayor Bloomberg has done in New York to make some of the initiatives that we have. And Michael, as you're leaving, I want you to know that this Conference of Mayors took on last year the issue of seniority and tenure. We've taken on the issue of Common Core standards. Many of us believe that at a minimum, if mayors aren't running their schools, they need to be partnering with our schools to improve their success. So this is a conference, as Mayor Bloomberg said, that's understood from the beginning, that ideology and orthodoxy are not where it's at when it comes to our kids. This is a conference that has put our kids first and challenged the adults, including those who would defend the status quo wherever we've had to. So we now have a panel discussion on education reform, and I'm pleased to introduce my friend Kevin Johnson of Sacramento, the mayor who's made education reform his absolute mantra, has done a great deal. I mean, we have worked together with Sacramento on race, in support of Race to the Top, in support of the Parent Trigger, which started in Los Angeles, in support of the idea that we need to address seniority and tenure in a positive way. He's the first native Sacramentan and the first African American to be elected to that office. Mayor Johnson has been a champion for education reform, and I'm very pleased that we have such a strong panel of mayors. Let me call on Mayor Johnson to introduce the panel and moderate this discussion.
All right, good morning to everyone. Thank you for hanging around. Do you guys have this? Do folks have this? All right, we're going to, since it's education, we're going to have a little teacher-pupil interaction on this in a moment. Maybe. Wasn't that refreshing to have Mayor Bloomberg here today? He's a straight shooter, and I think at the end of the day that we as mayors know that education needs to be front and center in all of our communities in a real way. And that's why I'm excited about this panel discussion. Before I do it, again, I'm mayor of the city of Sacramento. I have the honor to be the chair of the Education Reform Task Force. Antonio Viragosa appointed me to it. Elizabeth Kaus did the year before. And I want to thank Tom Cochran just for his leadership as well. So let me tell you what we've done in the last couple of years. As Antonio talked about, we brought 2 resolutions forward. LIFO, seniority, we know that's a policy that is not in the best interest of kids. We passed that resolution last year. We also reauthorized the ESEA resolution. That was something that was very important for the president and Arnie Duncan. And all these things are bipartisan. I think that's important to note, that we as mayors have come together and around education on a bipartisan way. But this booklet here, you guys as mayors have given us a lot of input in terms of this booklet, and this is what we've worked toward. I want to thank Kathy, wherever she's at, and her team for helping create this booklet. So if you wouldn't mind turning to page 16.
This is really cool.
And page 17. This is going to form as our quick discussion. So we have 4 mayors up here representing alignment, partnership, advocate, and partial control. And Mayor Bloomberg, who just left, obviously is an example of somebody who has full control of their schools. What we wanted to do for mayors is to show you along this spectrum, all of us as mayors fit somewhere along this spectrum. Every mayor in here, and these are best case and best practice examples of what mayors are doing in their city. And then I'd like for you folks to either ask questions or join our task force. We have a task force where we have conference calls with Arnie Duncan. We have leadership meetings throughout the year. In fact, next month we're going to the Gates Foundation. Many of you have already signed up. The Gates Foundation is hosting the U.S. Conference of Mayors next month. So we are putting education front and center, and I felt that these mayors would do a great job of helping us share the story along a spectrum so that everyone in here can see where they would be involved. The other thing I want to say, and Mayor Bloomberg talked about it, we have a crisis in our country. We have a real crisis. When you look at math and science, we're no longer as competitive as we used to be. We used to be first, and we're no longer first. If you think about our dropout rates and you think about student achievement, we have a huge disparity between African American kids and Latinos and white kids and communities all around the country. There's no way we're going to be able to compete. There's going to be 120 million jobs. 120 million jobs 20 years from now. The rate we're going, we're only going to have 50 million students to be able to service those 120 million jobs. That means 70 million jobs are going to be outsourced to countries like China, India, and so forth. This is our country, the greatest country in the world, and we're not doing right by our children. And I think that's why I'm so excited and so thankful to the mayor for allowing me to talk about education today. So rather than introduce each of our panelists, I'm going to do one at a time, throw a question at them, and then I'm going to go down the list. And I think that will help us understand kind of where we're at.
He's a good moderator.
What'd you say, Tom?
I said you're a good moderator.
I'm just getting started.
It's a private comment to Mayor Smith, but it was, I'm glad it was nice. I did agree with him.
Okay, now you guys are cutting into my time, so thank you.
See, you just proved it.
So let me start with Carolyn Goodman, Mayor of Las Vegas. This lady's a rock star, you know that. Just this past July, she just got elected, and her and her husband switched seats, which is kind of cool. And we all know that. And this lady has charisma. But what I don't know, a lot of you do or do not know, that she started a private school before she ended up becoming mayor. And in her school, it was one of the only schools in Las Vegas that went on to have 100% high school graduation rate and kids going on to college. So, Mayor, I want to throw the first question at you, if you don't mind. One of the things that mayors can do is align their city services. So in your booklet, number one, alignment. All of us as mayors in this country, we have to, at the bare minimum, align our city services with the school district. It doesn't cost us money. It's just about efficiency. It's about building partnership and relationships. So, Mayor Goodman, you know that all of us can do this. And can you tell us any of the programs that you've initiated in terms of student outcomes and alignment in Vegas?
Well, I'm delighted. I have to tell you, I'm delighted to be here and part of this group, and it's an excellent pamphlet that's been given to all of you. And before I answer this question, I have to tell you, 12 years of being here and accompanying my husband, who was term limited. Every day of his life, he would assure his population he was the happiest mayor in the universe. Now, everybody thought it was because he was like yourselves, so lucky to be a mayor. The reason, truly, was because every morning I would get out of bed before him, run to his side of the bed, applaud him, so he would feel wonderful for the day. I have been in office 7 months. He has yet to come to my side of the bed, and I find it appalling. So I want to tell you, I am going to answer this question, but I'm passionate about education, and I have put in 30 years not complaining without doing something. And it is time for us as mayors, as I spoke with my husband often, in fact, to the point of ad nauseum, I'm sure, for him, that we do, at the grassroots level, have the ability to make a difference. And I am going to tell you, and then I'm going to answer your question. This is where life begins. This is where education begins. It is not in the failure of our high schools and our middle schools, our dropout, our crime. It starts right here. And in our second round of questioning, I hope I will be able to address this, Mr. Chairman, because I am passionate and know and have worked in this area so long. We can't get businesses to come to the Southern Nevada or to the state. We rank 48, 49, or 50 in education. And now as mayor, my husband's focus was bringing back a blighted community. My focus is education. Our children need it from the very essence. So our city has provided, and to answer the alignment question, what are we doing, what have we been doing? We, of course, have the issues of the Safe Key program. Many of you probably have that, where you provide care and maybe tutoring or some type of structure, both before school and after school. Our city and our state has probably one of the largest student body numbers in the country, or one of the 5. I think we were the 5th largest district in the country. We also have a new superintendent of schools. So the first thing in aligning, of course, is working with your superintendent. But we do have this before school and after school program, Safe Key, and we do provide snacks and food with them. We are a parks provider, so when some of the schools don't have facilities and parks in which they can have their athletics, we do provide those. We partner in the security program. We partner in the arts program for middle and upper schools. We provide facilities in which they can go ahead and hold their programs because our budgets are as stringent and tight and depressed as they are around the country. But these are ways that we can help. We provide tutorials, and especially because 33% of our continuing to grow population is largely Latino, many of whom don't speak English. So we do provide tutorials as English is a second language. We have an adaptive program for physically challenged children that we hold in a park, both indoors and outdoors. These are children from our school district. And we do also, aside from summer programs, something that was started a couple of years ago and actually came out of the U.S. Mayor's Conference, our Batteries Included program for at-risk young people who need to work on skills, learn how to fill out an application. And we have partnership this with the district, with our Nevada Culinary and our Nevada partners, all 501c3 effort, donation-driven, private-public partnership. So giving young people job skills, life skills, training, and internships. And I would say the biggest thing that I believe in from my position, and hopefully from what we have just heard from Mayor Bloomberg, and I grew up in New York City, so I know what it's like. My entire education until college was in New York City. What we're about is the bully pulpit. That's what we have to do. And we are a city manager type of government by charter, and our superintendent and our school district is a separate entity. And I know we're limited on time and we're running late, so did I get in everything I possibly
Thumbs up.
could? Thank you.
Thumbs up. Okay, so if you look at alignment, number one, you see other examples. San Jose has City Schools Collaborative. Stanford has back office services where they're working with school districts. Oklahoma City has a MAPS program for kids, Safe Summer Initiative in Montgomery. So if you guys have examples, please let us know. We want to make sure we catalog so all mayors can know things that are going on under the alignment category. So again, that's the bare minimum that we should be doing. The second area is partnership, and you can see here, this is about where mayors can make things a city initiative, a citywide initiative. And that's what Carolyn was talking a little bit about. We can take advantage of our bully pulpit, and we can highlight issues that we think are very important. And I thought a great example of this would be Mayor Fisher. And quick introduction, you know Mayor Fisher, he's the 50th mayor of Louisville. He was very successful as a business person, and now he's applying his business acumen to city government and has a great example, I think, for mayors to hear that may work for your cities or may not, but hopefully get you thinking. So, Mayor Fisher.
Thank you, Kevin. So we're going to talk about our 55,000 degree program. It's a focus on college and adults with college degrees. 55,000 more college degrees in our city by the year 2020 than what we normally would have. So we have about 150,000 adults right now with college degrees, so we're shooting for 205,000. When we do that, we'll be amongst the top tier of American cities in terms of adults with college education. Obviously, education leads to innovation, it leads to jobs. And we're not just focusing on the 55,000 in terms of a quantity, we're also focusing on the quality of these degrees. We've all talked about this mismatch that we have in the country right now in terms of job openings, but not the right skills. So it's a combination of quantity and quality as well. Of that 55, 40,000 are 4-year degrees, 15,000 are 2-year degrees. Then we have some sub-goals underneath the 55,000 as well for our minority community and adults with some working college. So this has basically been using the power of the mayor to convene. I'm sure you all notice that when your office calls, people tend to show up. So we have a board of about 28 people that consist of our 8 colleges and universities in the Louisville area, our nonprofits. Jefferson County Public School System has 100,000 students. They're at the table and extremely active as well. And then, of course, our business community is in this 110% in terms of identifying what we need, where we need to go, et cetera. Now, what this has done, this came out of a project that we call the Greater Louisville Project that we started after the merger of our city and county governments 9 years ago. I think we're the last large American city to merge like this. And obviously, one of the things that we identified as one of our key deep drivers of change was education, along with jobs and quality of place. So we needed to measure so that we could grow and come up with programs to make a difference. And that's what the 55,000 degree program has been all about. It's created a common language for us. As we all know in our cities, there's all kinds of challenges, but people frequently talk about them in different ways at different times, and there's not alignment, so you get no results. We've developed a common language. We've pulled this board together. We have common action as well, so we're able to measure ourselves. I'd say it's also created tremendous enthusiasm for the journey, because when you're with a group like this, we've done a lot of pre-work, a lot of planning. We spend about $900,000 a year on this, so it's not a big budget program, but when you put in the board and all the community time, it's a very effective way to mobilize and target. So it builds a sense of belief that we can do this because we've got good data backup on where we are and where we need to go, and we've got a lot of action as well. So that obviously is better than just kind of talking about how things should be and hoping it works out. So the enthusiasm is spreading throughout the community. It's one thing to have this at a top level at a board or in a business combine. It's another to start hearing about it on the ground and building those degrees from the ground up as well. So that's where we're at right now. We're about 16 months into the program. Our first year results, we're on track, but obviously this is a 10-year program that's going to require a sense of urgency and really daily focus. We'll know when we're successful when you are out in the community or you're at a party and a colleague comes up to you and says, tell me what your company's doing in the 55,000 degree program. Because this really, when you think about it, and a lot of the things that we're talking about at this conference are culture changes. We can't reach these goals just by a little bit of continuous improvement. We need some breakthroughs and we need some innovation in terms of the way people think and the attention they put to these issues. And so while we're getting a little bit better every day, we're also working on cementing that culture change.
Thanks, Mayor. So let me give another example of a citywide initiative that we as mayors should be thinking about, in my opinion. One is third grade reading. I think most of us know that every kid, by the time they leave third grade, should be reading at grade level. That is not happening in our country. It is not happening in most states. It is not happening in most cities. So there's a third grade reading initiative called Third Grade Reading Matters, and there's a booklet on your table. If any mayor is interested in being a part of that, the deadline is March 12th. Here's what happens. If you put together a plan, nudge your superintendent to be involved. If you put together a plan by March 12th, and you could be a part of a network of a very few select cities around the country that will have access to philanthropic dollars and a host of other best practices, so you can be very, very instrumental in creating a citywide initiative for third grade reading. Let me give you a data point in Sacramento. Only 37% of third graders in Sacramento are reading at grade level. 37%. That means 63% are not reading at grade level. That is not acceptable. And it's not a whole lot different for the country and the state of California either. And it's not a whole lot different in most of your cities. So I really think in terms of early childhood education and the things that we think are important, this third grade reading initiative falls under number 2, the partnership category. Where is your appetite as a mayor? Where do you want to play along the spectrum? I think third grade reading is something certainly to consider. So again, afterward, if you have any questions, we'll make sure to sign you up. The All-America City Contest is going to award 10 cities next year as All-America Cities based on their plan to attack third grade reading in your respective cities. So I think this is an opportunity for all of us to think about. And this is going to be an initiative that we talk about over the next 2 to 3 years. All right, third is category 3, the advocate category. And again, there's a lot of mayors in here who are already kind of in this bucket, but I thought Mayor Hancock would be a great example. He's the 45th mayor of Denver, doing great work. He came up through the urban leagues. He led the urban league. He understands community solutions. He's been very innovative. His predecessors in Denver were doing things like preschool and scholarships and taking city dollars to make sure they're putting them in their highest priority areas, young people, and then scholarships for kids when they graduate. Mayor Hancock.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. And let me just say that I believe that there is no greater advocate or potential advocate in a city than the mayor. The bully pulpit, the exposure, the ability to kind of grab the attention from the business community, community-based leaders, the media, and to direct them toward an issue is one of the more powerful tools, quite frankly, in this whole question around education. And so while I was running for mayor and I took office in July, I was criticized for my advocacy or discussion around education. Until one day I asked an audience to simply name one thing that the mayor is expected to address that is not predicated on a quality education system in their city. And the room fell silent. It was my way to begin to demonstrate or dramatize the importance of schools on the issue of education, on the issue of economic development, on the issue of public safety. And while we were doing this, of course, I watched, as we all did in Denver, the kind of dysfunction that was occurring with regards to our Board of Education. And as I watched one night, for the first time ever, a debate around an education system program in Denver Public Schools, I watched as they kept very on a dysfunctional level argue about this issue. But not one time in the 90-minute debate did someone mention children or the interests of the kids. And I knew then that if I became mayor, that I would play a very active role in electing good board members to the Board of Education. So the ability to use that bully pulpit to encourage as well as to hopefully create opportunities to bring a better Board of Education was very important to me. Let me tell you what Denver has done on a local level to really encourage some of the state policies. In 2007, Denver passed a mill levy to support pro-compensation for our teachers, which basically says we're going to pay you according to your performance in Denver. And the people of Denver supported overwhelmingly the mill levy to pay our teachers better if they were effective teachers. In May of 2010, a state senator by the name of Mike Johnston followed the pro-comp plan on a state level with a new program to deal effectively with teacher evaluation, as well as with the issue of tenure in Colorado. Senate Bill 191 simply said to teachers, 50% of your evaluation will be built around student growth. For principals, 50% of your evaluation will be centered or based on student growth as well. Not only will we evaluate you based on student growth to get to the most effective teachers, but we're also going to deal with the tenure so that it takes a backseat to your effectiveness rating. So no longer is tenure or seniority the basis for whether or not you keep your job. We're going to start with how you've been measured as an effective teacher or not, and then your seniority and tenure will come into play. And then finally, the other third key element of Senate Bill 191 was simply that teachers who were deemed ineffective, from my bad language, ineffective, would be placed on, if they were not hired by other schools, would be placed on administrative leave, unpaid administrative leave, instead of remaining paid while sitting at home on the district's payroll. It was bold. It was transformative. It was groundbreaking legislation. And we knew the unions would fight. But it was the advocacy from the ground up, led by mayors as well in the business community, simply said it's time to make a difference. So now we had the pro-comp plan in place where the city of Denver was paying its teachers better based on their effectiveness rating. And secondly, we began to deal effectively with the tenure challenge that faced our public school system with teachers who were being rated as ineffective, remaining in their jobs based on their tenure. So the mayor is playing a role whether it's dictating or working to find a way to encourage and influence Board of Education seats, as well as really just raising the level in conversation to a place where everyone is now involved is extremely important, and one that I think that all of us as mayors should be prepared to play, whether you have control of education in your city or not. The bottom line is you're the most effective voice and mouthpiece for effective education.
Thanks, Mayor. So again, if you look at your booklet, the third category where it says advocate, there's some examples of where mayors can push the envelope a little more. You can run a slate of school board members. You can lobby on policies that you think are important. That's what Mayor Hancock was talking about. And also you can create an accountability school report card. And Mayor Bloomberg talks about a lot about this in the kind of fifth bucket for mayors who have full control. But it really applies to all of us. The next speaker is the mayor from Indianapolis. And Mayor Ballard has been a champion. And I want all of us in the audience, this is a bipartisan panel. You have Democrats and Republicans up here. Mayor Ballard has been a champion for the work that he's been doing in Indianapolis, actually getting a lot of national recognition. A lot of people talk about New Orleans being ground zero for ed reform, but Indianapolis is doing some amazing things. He was elected the 48th mayor in 2007, just got reelected, is a faithful steward of taxpayers' monies, but he's made education a top priority. So, Mayor, I'd love for you to talk briefly about the charter authorizing ability that you have. He's the only mayor in the country that has the ability to authorize charters. Mayor Ballard.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. I appreciate that very much. And we've had a lot of education reform. A lot of it was just last year, but 8 or 9 years ago, the State House authorized the mayor of Indianapolis to charter schools, and it's had a dramatic effect. I'll give you a little bit of the lay of the land. We have 11 different school systems in the city of Indianapolis, so I don't have a superintendent to deal with. There are 11 superintendents, plus private schools, plus now charter schools, and we have over 20 charter schools, and it's a tough cut in the city of Indianapolis. Of the 50 applicants that have come forward while I've been the mayor, we've only approved 8. It's a very, very difficult cut. But we have a dramatic effect when those schools are successful. Stanford University just recently said that the Indianapolis charter schools options for our students really have outpaced traditional schools in learning improvement for the students. So I think that's very important. And there's strict accountability. People come to us all the time and say, how are you doing this? Other people that do charter schools throughout the nation come to our office and say, how do you hold them accountable? And I held a couple schools, the ultimate accountability method, I guess, and I closed them. And I'm the only guy that's ever closed schools in the state of Indiana that I know of, and I don't know if it's the country, but I certainly have closed 2 schools because they just were not performing, and one was before their chartering time was up. So they know that they must perform. The great thing about charter schools is so many of these go into tough neighborhoods. The people who want to do charter schools, education management organizations usually come in to help partner with people, what we call anchor institutions in the city of Indianapolis. They usually partner up in most cases and go into tough neighborhoods to provide an option. And I like choice. I like competition in schools, and I think that's important. We have general type schools. One of them, Tinley, is what we call in our Meadows neighborhood. Again, a very tough neighborhood. No real good option in there unless they go to Tinley. Tinley is very rigorous with a population base that just could not succeed in regular public schools. And every child who graduates from Tinley High School goes to a 4-year college. Absolutely every one of them. It's amazing if you saw what happened at that school. But it also gives you unique offerings also. We have something called the Hope Academy, which deals with substance abuse. There's only probably 30 to 50 kids in that school at any one time. The graduation is usually 6 to 12 students a year. But these kids could not succeed anywhere else. And it's an amazing school. I've been in there quite a few times, and they do such good work in there. We just recently we opened up the Daymar Academy, which deals with kids with behavioral and cognitive disabilities. A very special school. Only public school in the state of Indiana that deals with that. A lot of tears shed that day when we cut that ribbon just recently. So that's what charter schools can do for you. In addition to all that, we have a great organization in the city of Indianapolis called the Mind Trust, which is headed by a guy named Dave Harris. He does a great job. Actually used to run the charter school office in the city of Indianapolis for my predecessor. And we are in the process of partnering with the Mind Trust. We actually just gave the Mind Trust $2 million and we're going to open somewhere between 20 and 30 new charter schools in the city of Indianapolis. Again, very rigorous standards. We will make sure that they hold to those very rigorous standards as they go forward, and it's going to be a tremendous success in the city of Indianapolis and the state of Indiana. It really is. And the other thing that we've really been doing, the people who have been very successful, like Tinley, we are expediting their applications to replicate their schools rather quickly so that we can, again, multiply the success of the charter schools in the city of Indianapolis. So it's been very effective so far. We have the studies to prove that what we have been doing in the city of Indianapolis for charter schools particularly has been very effective, and our kids are benefiting from it.
All right, thanks, Mayor. So again, item 4 here, which says partial control, it essentially are examples where mayors could authorize charters. In some cases, mayors appoint school board members. And I think many of you have talked about this as an opportunity that you wanted to consider. The last category is full control. Mayor Bloomberg talked about that. This is essentially mayors having control of their schools. Are there raise your hand if you're a mayor in the audience. Okay, hands down. Raise your hand if you are a mayor that has full control of a school. So one in the back. Oh, Mayor Gray, what's going on in the back? Thank you for all the work you're doing, sir. All right, so Mayor Ortis in the side. Okay, cool. Raise your hand if you're a mayor who would like to have full control of the school and you don't. I think almost all hands should go up. This is about accountability. All right, so you can see here along the spectrum, there's all kind of ways that you can get involved. Secretary of Education Arnie Duncan has made a commitment to us that he is willing to help any mayor in here who wants to do their part to explore these options. So again, it has to be where your appetite is. In California, you have to change the constitution of the state in order for a mayor to take over control of the school. So you can want to do it all you want, it's just not going to happen. So every state has their own set of challenges, so it doesn't apply to everybody. But again, somewhere along this spectrum, I'm hoping folks are involved. Okay, this is our kind of last round. We're going to make this a little bit quicker, a little bit crisper. What I want the mayors to do, and this is what I want you folks to think about, in June, we're going to bring forward a couple policies that we'd like to have passed as a resolution, and we're thinking about 3 of them, and we're going to talk about them briefly. And I want Mayor Goodman to talk a little bit about school choice and competition, and then I'll talk about a charter compact after that. So Mayor Goodman in Vegas.
I couldn't agree more that a good competition with proper leadership, which is the key in each of the charter schools, which we have. We also have magnet schools, which place 100% the magnet schools in technology and math and science. Public schools are very, very successful with 100% placement. The problem is there's a lottery. There are too many students that want to get in, and we can't afford it with the budget that we have for the public school system to go ahead and create more of these at this point. There is a huge competitiveness, however, to get into them. First and foremost, the magnet schools. Charter schools depend on what they're doing, and of course there's a great variability. The license for them is by the state, and so in our community, they have to meet certain standards. What has happened, though, there has been a feeling out there among the populace that what about the students that can't afford to participate in the charter schools and the magnet schools that are left solely in the public school system as it stands? And our biggest concern, and my biggest concern, is in fact in that area. And we are band-aiding everything. Charter schools are wonderful. The competition is great. It will do nothing but raise the level of every other type of school. But my concern are the students who are left in the public school system that can't either get into or access through lottery one of the charter schools that is succeeding very well, and how do we help those young people? And those children really take on my focus. But competition is great. We have parochial schools, independent nonprofit schools, and I will tell you, representing up here with my colleagues or those who've left, I am a nonpartisan. I'm a registered nonpartisan. So I am totally, and not that they aren't, totally into both sides of the coin to let's see how we can fix this. Everything we're doing, the school I spent 30 years on, it's a Band-Aid. I would never have done that but for the need to address the quality of education in this country. And we need to do it, and we need to do it from the start. And the competition by the charter schools is wonderful, or the magnet schools that exist in your cities, or the parochial or independent schools. But they have to meet budget too, and there's dollars that are needed. And we may need to make sure that we're taking our tax dollars and putting them back into the public in the right places. And the right place is the quality teacher. They certainly don't hold a standard, nor are they lauded like our entertainers, our sports figures. Their salaries are an embarrassment. And it is in the quality of the teacher that makes the difference to the child, whether it's in a charter school, a magnet school. And our magnet schools have the finest teachers in the entire state. They're not down there in the public school for the rest of the children who are the basis of our community. We've got to open up those types of skill buildings. We've got to give, and I love that we have moved from fourth grade focus to third grade focus in reading. My purpose is kindergarten. Every child that's able to read that isn't special needs to start reading in kindergarten, needs to start reading and doing math in kindergarten, because then there will not be the crime. There will not be all these young people who have no skills, who can't get a job because they have no skills. And so what are they supposed to do? And we can fix it all in the elementary level so they do have the skills. We now, in our city, are thinking about putting in magnet schools at the lowest level.
Mayor.
That's it.
This is going to be a rapid round. We're going to try to get people
I
in and out.
apologize to all of you. When you have a passion, which all of you do, that you're sitting here, it goes on. I'm sorry, Chair. And if you want to fire me, fire me.
No way, no way. So again, when she talked about third grade reading and early childhood, just remember really quickly, when we're talking about third grade, it is early childhood. We want 0 to 4, as she's talking about. We want kids who enter kindergarten ready. We have to start even earlier. So the one policy I want to throw out for us as a U.S. Conference of Mayors group to think about is a charter compact. It essentially is saying that we believe school districts should work with charter schools and create a good working relationship, not to be adversarial. When it comes to facilities, when it comes to access, when it comes to sharing best practices. That makes sense for all of us. And again, some cities are doing it. There's 16 cities around the country. We think that's a good policy. Charter schools are not the panacea to education, but they are a good option, a good choice, and they create good competitive competition. So you'll hear a little bit more about that. I'm going to jump to Mayor Ballard here really quickly. So Mayor, you've talked a little bit about the charter world, but you just got new legislation that allowed you to appoint a deputy of education. Can you talk, Mayor Ballard, briefly?
I will. I'll be very brief. I speak pretty quickly. The state did a lot of good work in the last session, last year, and they made a lot of changes, which now allows me to hire a deputy. I mean, I could have, but it wouldn't have been credible or effective, to be honest with you. So, but we've done so much good work there. We now have teacher pay increases based on being good, and we rate them by highly effective, effective, needing improvement, or ineffective. And they also put into state law that no student may be taught by 2 consecutive years by a teacher who's been rated ineffective. We have $17 million in performance-based awards for outstanding teachers. We have the Mitch Daniels, our governor, we call it the Mitch Daniels Early Graduation Scholarship. If you graduate in 3 years instead of 4, we're going to give you $4,000 to go to college, straight up. The state will. Again, talking about the relationship between charter schools and regular public schools, we have a relationship now to use unused facilities. We have increased funding for full-day kindergarten. And collective bargaining is still there, but it's only for salaries and wages and for salaries and benefits. So there's been a dramatic change in the city of Indianapolis and the state of Indiana as a result of these. And then I think this now allows the city of Indianapolis, even though I think they've done good work and our graduation rate has been increasing steadily, certainly in the last 3 years, now allows us to go to really a different place. And I think we're going to take advantage of that.
Thanks, Mayor. Mayor Brown's also in the audience, also has an opportunity to have a deputy of education. So again, you mayors are doing incredible things. Please make sure you share the information with us so we can get it out to other mayors. So the second policy that we're looking at bringing forward in June is teacher evaluation. We brought LIFO forward, as we talked about, but teacher evaluations. There's got to be multiple measures for effectiveness. Student achievement is measured by data. That's one of them. But what the other teachers are doing around the school, the student work, the students' perceptions, we want to bring that forward because at the end of the day, as Mayor Bloomberg has said, we've got to make sure our kids are learning in a real way. And we don't want to be a body that's just here, singing and dancing. We want some teeth in what we're doing in terms of the mayor's conference. So that's one we'll be talking about come June. I'd like Mayor Fisher, as he kind of is our last speaker on this today, is, again, what you're doing with that 55,000 deal. What's it called?
55,000 degrees.
55,000 degrees. Any last thought that you want to share with us on that? And then I'm going to tie one policy to what you're doing.
Great. Well, governments, big companies are great at putting these big goals out, right? 55,000 degrees. We all congratulate each other, say it's great, and then go away, and then frequently nothing happens. So how do you get 55,000 degrees? 1 degree at a time. So taking a bold, aspirational goal like this, and then drilling it down to the individual family, the individual student, really is what the challenge is. So we've received commitment letters from each of our board members. I always say, I'm not watching the lips, I'm watching the actions. And so it's easy for people to flap their lips, but now they're getting in with their commitments. So how many more degrees are going to come from their companies, whether they're universities or junior colleges, what their plan is to increase their degrees by X%, and they got a full plan behind it. So we have some confidence that we have a plan that's going to get some results. We have developed a tool for businesses so that you can survey your employees, who has some college, who wants to complete college, et cetera. So then you can say, all right, we're going to target on these 10 people, and our tuition reimbursement plan is going to be for them. So in closing, the ultimate goal here is I want to have everybody tell me, count me in. Count me in. I'm part of this deal. So when you all come to Louisville, to come to the Kentucky Derby or whatever you're going to come for, you're going to drive through the community, and you're going to see at the headquarters of Humana, you'll see on their front door a number, 268. When you go by a church, you'll see a number, 15. And these are these organizations' commitments to the 55,000 degree program with a backup plan for each one of them, 1 degree at a time. Thank you.
All right, so impressive. So as we close out, by show of hands, who was here yesterday for Tom Friedman? Everybody. So I want to connect what Mayor Fisher said. Tom Friedman was very clear yesterday in saying that education is critical for our country to be competitive at the global level. And the average is not good enough anymore. It is no longer acceptable. And it's this notion as a country we're losing our competitive edge, and we've got to bring it back front and center. So the last one I want to talk about is a policy that we'll consider, and Mayor Villaraigosa talked about it a little bit earlier, is parent trigger. And why is that important? Because Mayor Tom Friedman said yesterday that parents have to play a critical role. So let me give you an example. In this country, there were three high-profile cases that all involved parents. The first one was in the movie Waiting for Superman, where all these parents wanted to be able to have a seat to send their kid to charter schools. It didn't happen. The second one was in Compton, where these parents were trapped and their kids were going to failing schools that weren't doing very well. That wasn't acceptable, so these parents ended up getting threatened, who signed this parent trigger to enact a new law to give them the power and ability to move forward. They were being threatened to be deported in Compton, which is not acceptable at all. And then lastly, in Akron, Ohio, there was a lady who falsified her records to make sure her daughter and kids went to good school, and she got arrested. If we want parents involved, that's certainly not the message that we want to say. And I'd love for us as mayors to be talking about how we can empower and engage parents, and that'll be the third policy that we talk about this year. So thank you very much for your time. Let's give the panelists a round of applause, and I'll turn it over to Mayor Villaraigosa.
Thank you to the members of the panel. We'll be starting lunch with our closing speaker, David Plouffe, Senior Advisor to President Barack Obama. Is it here? Oh, it's right in here. We'll stay here. And is he here? Not quite yet. So let me make a comment or two about what you all just heard and the charge before us. You listen to Tom Friedman, and as I said to him, if you read The World is Flat when it was written 5 years ago, people actually thought that he was talking about, when he said in his book that we weren't competing in math, science, and engineering, people thought he was actually talking about the kids of the privileged, the affluent, and the upper middle class. I'm sorry, that he was talking about the poor and the people at the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder. But actually, we're not competing. Our schools, the kids of the affluent, the upper middle class aren't competing in math, science, and engineering. So when we talk about education reform, we talk about accountability, we talk about multiple measures of evaluation, we talk about seniority and tenure and the things that we have to do to improve our schools. Understand this, we're not just talking about someone else's kids. We're talking about our own. I have a daughter at SC, a son that was at Princeton, a daughter that graduated from FIT. Every one of us, most of us, have our kids or have had them in institutions of higher learning, but they're not competing in math, science, and engineering. And so the challenge before us isn't just the challenge of improving education for someone else's kids. It's the challenge of improving education for our own. It's the challenge to have America's future generation be as equipped, be as smart, be as educated, particularly in math, science, and engineering, as any kid anywhere in the world. And that's what this is about. And Mayor Johnson, thank you. Mayor Johnson was all over me pushing this idea that we should have this plenary again. And I said, absolutely. Thank you for your leadership. Mayor Ballard, Mayor... Yeah, Hancock was here, Mayor Fisher, and Mayor Goodman. Thank you all. I thought... So, we'll... a couple of minutes. We're waiting for Mr. Pluff. I didn't say that. Mr. Pluff. Boy, that was a misnomer. Thank God there was... David Pluff will be in just a moment. He's walking in right now? He's walking in the building right now. Here he comes, Mr. Johnson, and others, if you all can. I think David is coming in as we speak. He is. All right. And by the way, he was going to be here a little earlier, but I saw that our panel was late, so I asked if David would come and speak to us. Let me just say that our closing speaker today is David Pluff, Senior Advisor to President Barack Obama, a key architect in the President's 2008 campaign before joining the White House. And over the course of this meeting, we've been able to meet with President Obama and numerous cabinet members. Many of you met with them in breakout sessions. Virtually all of them have tried to either come to the reception or to the conference. We've been able to make our case that the country's metro regions drive the nation's economy and are key to the full recovery from a great recession. So I'm very pleased. David's here to continue this conversation with us. Please help me in welcoming David Pluff.
Well, thanks, everyone. I'm not going to start by singing any Al Green. That's now something everyone's going to expect from members of the administration, but only President Obama can carry that tune. I want to thank President Villaraigosa and Vice President Nutter and Second Vice President Smith for inviting me here today. I'd start by saying, hopefully, as many of you saw, the President was in Orlando, Florida yesterday, making an announcement that's going to make it a lot easier for foreign tourists to visit America. And this is the kind of action we've taken many times in the past few months. It's something we call the We Can't Wait, where we are scouring the government and listening to a lot of people in America about things we can do on our own to help improve the economy and help improve the country. And something like this seems like a very small procedural detail, but it's actually going to have a huge impact in cities like Los Angeles and Orlando, Las Vegas, Philadelphia, all around the country, in communities large and small, where people from around the world can come and spend money and visit and learn about our country. If you're a small business owner, more tourists mean more revenue. And if you're one of the many Americans who are still looking for work, more revenue might mean more jobs. And for just about everybody in this room, tourist dollars do play a role in your budgets and in your communities. And we were losing a lot of business to other countries, and that has to stop, and now it will. But this isn't just an abstract policy decision that's made in the White House. It will help people in those communities all around the country get through some of the toughest times any of us can remember, certainly since the Great Depression. What's nice about talking to all of you, and I know members of the administration, including the President earlier this week, had a chance to visit with you, you are grounded, obviously, in the real world, that every decision that we make here in Washington, that your governors make, that you make as mayors, these have direct impact on your constituents in the moment and the kind of cities and towns that are going to be built for your residents in the coming years. So when we talk about investing in education and reforming it, investing in transportation, about how we create good, lasting middle-class jobs, about how we become known again for making things that are sold all around the world, stamped with those great words, made in the USA, you understand how much these things mean to the people living in your cities. And while you come from both parties, you know the debate here in Washington needs to be a lot more about scoring political points. It needs to be about putting points on the board for you and your communities and the American people. And the decisions we make in this city have a real direct impact. So for many of your constituents, it's never been more important that government live up to their responsibilities. And that's what's happening all around the country is people know that you're living up to your responsibilities. You're having to make hard decisions. County governments, state governments, people running businesses, small and large, having to make really tough decisions. Workers, family members. You know, they've weathered this recession. They've made adjustments. They've been super responsible. And they want to see that same responsibility out of their institutions. And they certainly need to see more of that responsibility out of this city. And that's hopefully what we'll see in 2012. The president last month, some of you might have seen a speech he gave in Kansas, where he talked about the kind of values that he believes, and I think most people in America believe, need to undergird our economy. That this really is a make-or-break moment for the middle class. We have to continue to create jobs, get growth up, bring the unemployment rate down. But the central challenge facing the country, and it has been for decades, is how do we have more people in the middle class? How do we have those people in the middle class feel more secure about it? And the people that are fighting to get in the middle class, and so many of you people here in the room represent people who are trying to get in the middle class as their central goal in life. We have to have an economy and a government and a country that is focused on that task at this make-or-break moment for the middle class. And that speech he gave in Osawatomie, Kansas, small community in Kansas. But I think what's reflected there is what's happening all over the country, which is that for too many people in America now, they're not sure if they work hard and act responsibly if they're going to be rewarded. That no matter who you are, where you come from, you're going to have the same opportunities people in previous generations had. And that is something where too many Americans have come to believe that that basic bargain may be in question, that it might be eroded. And what we're seeing here is wage stagnation obviously has been a problem again, going back decades. For the average worker, they've been falling farther behind. There's a growing gap between the wealthiest and everybody else. And on top of that, it was exacerbated by the financial crisis. So even though people are dealing with wage stagnation, heading into 2008, less mobility, you put what happened in 2008 over it, it makes the burden of recovering for these folks and their aspirations even more challenging. So the challenges we face weren't created overnight. They weren't even created in 2008. These challenges have been going on for a long time. And it's going to take a long time for us not just to dig out of the recession, but to build the kind of America where everybody gets their fair share and we play by the rules, there's fair play, and everybody gets a fair shake. And it's a vision that says we are greater together than we are on our own, that we all succeed when everybody plays by the same rules. And I think that's true for our economy, but just as important as what it means to the economy is that's the kind of America that your residents and people all across America want to live in. A sense that there are the same rules in place for everybody, that their hard work is just as valued as someone else, that if you are not accountable or irresponsible, there's going to be consequences, no matter your station in life and no matter how powerful your legal team is or your accounting and lobbying team. And so that's really what we have to build here in America is we know the jobs with some certainty that are going to be needed to be created in your communities to succeed going forward. We know that we have to have a manufacturing sector here that's flourishing. Now, the good news is for the last 2 years, we've actually added manufacturing jobs. It's been a long time since we've done that. But in communities all across America, you're beginning to see a manufacturing renaissance. We've got to step on the accelerator, and the President's going to talk about some ideas on Tuesday night at the State of the Union about how we can do even more. We know we have to have those manufacturing jobs that pay people $18, $20, $22, $24 an hour, maybe more in certain communities, so that they can thrive. So many of those are going to be in the high-tech manufacturing field. And the remarkable thing we have right now in America is we have a moment where you're beginning to see more companies make the decision that economically it makes sense for them to stay in America or relocate in America. Because you're seeing rising wages in China and the cost of doing business increase there and in other countries, there's a window here. The President had a conference on this, some of you attended this a couple weeks ago, on insourcing. Companies came here to talk about their stories, about the decisions they made to bring jobs back. Think about that. We could have a moment period of this country where we're bringing jobs back. And they had some great ideas about what we at the federal government level could do to incent that. And again, the President will have more to say about that on Tuesday. But we have to seize this moment because we are not going to have, clearly, we're not going to get the job growth we need. But the kind of jobs we need are going to have to be a resurgence in our manufacturing sector, particularly in high-tech manufacturing. And we know so much of that is going to be in clean energy, healthcare technology, places that not just here in a country, but where our technology and our workers can export all around the world. So this is a really, really unique moment we have. And you see what's happening all over the country. Companies like Ford, they're investing $16 billion in this country between now and 2015, bringing back 2,000 jobs. And they're actually shifting production from countries like Japan, Mexico, and China to states like Michigan, Ohio, and Missouri. An aside is, it was announced yesterday that once again, after a long absence, General Motors is now the #1 automaker in the world, and we should all be proud of that. Another great example from the great city of Milwaukee, Master Lock, a familiar American company, they looked at their numbers to the point, and they realized that their union workers in America were competitive with non-union workers in China. And Master Lock is now exporting their products from the United States to China and Europe. And for the first time in 15 years, Master Lock's Milwaukee complex is up running at full capacity. At the event I mentioned, the insourcing event, Tim Bryan, the CEO of a healthcare IT company from New Jersey called Galaxy Solution, they've already hired 150 workers with their outsourced to Detroit program. And they plan on hiring up to 50. So this is something we want to work with all of you on. And again, we're going to lay out some new ideas on Tuesday. But how can we create the atmosphere, the policies, the incentives to make sure that as companies are making these decisions, they're going to stay rooted in your communities, they're going to start in your community, and they're going to add capacity in your community. Now, listen, last year was a very frustrating year here in Washington. And one of the real, really troubling moments was that at a time where the economy was already getting weaker, we had a little good moment in the beginning of 11, and then because of the Arab Spring and because of what happened in Japan and a variety of factors, Europe, the economy began to slow a little bit as we got into the summer. And then Washington made it worse. It was a self-inflicted wound to our confidence in this country, to our economy, and it's taken us a long time to dig out of that. The debt ceiling debacle is something that never needs to be repeated in Washington again. Now, we're not naive. We understand we live in a very divided country, and we're heading into an election year. But the election is still 10 long months away. The one thing I'm sure of is any of you that might be in your election year do not have the luxury of not focusing on the task at hand each and every day. And there's a sense here in Washington, some of the pundits are already saying this, even some members of Congress are already saying it, that, well, it's going to be hard to get anything done this year. It's an election year. We'll have to kick these debates and these problems down the field till 2013. Please, I would implore you, demand of us, demand of Republicans and Democrats in Congress, that's not acceptable. We will have an election. There'll be plenty of time to have the to and fro that's going to result in. There's a lot of work to be done right now. Now, Democrats and Republicans, almost with unanimity at the mayoral level, encouraged Congress to continue the payroll tax, the tax cut for the middle class. And your voices were enormously important. If you hadn't lifted up your voices and your constituents hadn't lifted up your voices, I think taxes would have gone up on everybody. But you forced action so that taxes are going to continue to be cut this year. And that's going to have a profound impact on every middle-class family, people trying to get to middle class, our businesses who need those customers. We still have a little work to do, so we need your help to make sure Congress lands the plane. But that was a moment where the parties, it was a little too late and a little too messy, but we finally came together. You got to help us make sure we do that. We got to make sure we extend that tax cut. We're going to continue to make the case that helping you, putting teachers back in your classrooms and firefighters and police officers back on the street is an important thing to do. It's traditionally had bipartisan support. It needs to again, given the struggles that you're facing at the local level in terms of your budgets. Not to mention that we're in a great competition now. The last thing we can be doing if we're going to compete, and our kids are going to compete, with kids in Bangalore and Singapore and Beijing, is to be shorting them in the classrooms. We've got to be pushing the accelerator down, not putting the brake on. And that has to be a central mission of this country, and we're going to help you with that. So there are job-producing ideas that traditionally have had bipartisan support that we think Congress ought to work on. We may not solve all the great philosophical debates this year. There's no question we won't. But we can do some smart things to help you. We can do things to assist in the manufacturing sector, to make sure we're pursuing tax policy that helps the middle class and also helps small businesses. We can work on education and reform, maybe do some things around immigration reform. It's a long year. And I think it's important that you hold Washington's feet to the fire, that this can't just be about speechifying this year. We got a lot of work to get done. We got a lot of people hurting out there. We got a lot of opportunity. Now, we're going to pursue every opportunity to work with Congress. We've had some success. I mentioned the payroll tax deal. We signed trade deals with Colombia and Panama and South Korea. We're going to be selling Fords and Chevys in South Korea, not just having them sell Hyundais here. We had patent reform, which is such a big deal for our entrepreneurs and our investors. We obviously, at the end of 10, cut taxes, repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell, did some things with the Republicans on nuclear weapons. So we've had some success, but we have a lot more. Now, we're not naive. So we are going to continue to look for every avenue where we can take action on our own. Sometimes that will be because there's gridlock here, because Congress won't act. Sometimes it's just because it's a good idea. And I would ask you, if you have ideas, you interact with this federal government every day. If you have ideas for executive actions we can take, we are all ears. You're going to have better ideas than we do because you're on the other end of this. And so, honestly, seriously, if you've got ideas, send them our way, because we want to continue not just to scour the government, but to ask people who are the customers of the government, partners of the government, for their ideas. Because we're going to continue all throughout this year, and if we're here after that, the next 4 years after that, to look at what we can do on our own to help communities, help your cities and towns, and help our workers. So the President is on Tuesday is going to deliver the State of the Union address. It would be foolish of me to preview it too much here and get ahead of him. and he's working on it as we speak. But a little sneak peek is that, as I mentioned, the president gave a speech in Kansas where he talked about the values he thought needed to animate our country and our economy. About fair play and everybody doing their fair share and everybody getting a fair shake, and about this make or break moment for the middle class and how we can create more good jobs from them, and for the first time in a long time, reverse the wage stagnation and have a moment where more people are getting into the middle class. It's going to take a long time. What he's going to lay out on Tuesday night is really putting some flesh on the bones there and lay out his concrete ideas, his blueprint, if you will, for how we can build an America that is here to last, an economy that's built to last. Because at the end of the day, after what we all went through in 2008 and the aftermath, that's what people want, that's what the country needs. Not a short-term economic moment built on bubbles or financial instruments. We need a durable economy and a durable country with a real sense of what our North Stars are. What are the things we need to do in the not-too-distant future where in your cities and all across the country we're doing the right things in terms of education and skills? Some of that, by the way, requires government reform. The president announced last week he's asking Congress for the ability, which presidents had all the way up till Reagan and it got taken away by Congress, to have what's called reorganization authority. What does that mean? It means the president has the ability in his administration to give to Congress for an up or down vote, so not 60 in the Senate but 50, ideas for how to make the government smarter and more leaner and more efficient. We have a government, you're surrounded here by a government that was built for the middle of the last century. It is not as efficient as it needs to be. It's not as strategic as it needs to be. It's not as customer-friendly as it needs to be. We have made big improvements using technology, efficiencies, metric measuring, and I hope you've seen a difference. But we have a lot more to do. So we gave some ideas last week, said, well, if we had such an authority, what would we do? And we do a lot of consolidating and a lot smarter work around our exports, around our business assistance, around small businesses. We want to reimagine and refashion and reform this government so it is built to provide you and your cities and our businesses the kind of government we need in this century. We become ossified. So one of the things we need to do is not just ideas and policies. That's important. And we're going to lay them out next week in energy, in manufacturing, in skills and education, in terms of some of the reforms we need to our institutions, more responsibility throughout this country. But also that needs to be directed here. And we have to, again, have, I think, big ambition about the kind of reforms we need to bring to this government. So it is a true partner for you at the local government level and a true partner with the private sector so that we can unleash the power of our people. So this is going to be an important year, not for the reasons a lot of people are focused on, which is what happens in November. That will come. But we have an economy that is still far too challenged. Now, slow progress, 22 straight months of private sector job growth, over 3 million jobs in that period. 2011 created more jobs than any year going back to 2005. But given the deep hole we find ourselves in, it's not enough. So, and we've got some external challenges out there. There's some turmoil going on in the Middle East. We still have a lot of instability in Europe. We have hanging over this town both the expiration of the Bush tax cuts at the end of the year and a sequester in terms of how we're going to get another $1 trillion plus of deficit reduction. Hopefully, everyone in this town will do that in a smart way, in a way that serves your cities, serves our people, serves our businesses. And we can't do anything here that would be, again, another self-inflicted wound that would slow this economy. In fact, we need to do the opposite, in smart ways. In the tough budget times we find ourselves in, what can we do in a collaborative way with you and with our businesses to play the role government should to help put a little more acceleration on this economy? So the American people, your residents, they've just been remarkable in this period. They've just dusted themselves off and they went right back to work. They've started new businesses. They've gotten new skills. They're saving. Some of them even have to adjust their dreams in life. And they're doing it, and they're doing it without complaint. And what they need is leaders. And you guys are on the front lines every day. You don't have the ability for much pontification and finger pointing. Okay? So this is more about our national leaders. They need to see their leaders here acting more responsibly, putting their nose to the grindstone. We have big debates within our parties. They're not going to be solved easily. But there is an area of common ground. And I don't think the country wants us to wait till 2013 to make more progress on our problems. And I would humbly admit the people that will be on the ballot next November would probably be better served if they would show they can make progress. So we look forward to working with you this year. You always give us and our staff great ideas, great insights, great criticisms. Please keep them coming. We need to be better partners with you. We need to be more innovative. All of you are doing remarkably innovative things in your city that some of them can scale up, some can't. But we want to take a look at all of them, and hopefully we can continue to make progress and make sure we continue to build an American economy that's built to last for all of our citizens. So thank you, Mayor.
Many of the initiatives, David, that you have charted as priorities for the nation moving forward are initiatives that we put together in our Common Sense Jobs Agenda in September. They're extending for the rest of the year the payroll tax, as you mentioned, investing in infrastructure, investing in school construction. That we supported the trade agreements and said that we need visa reform to promote tourism in this country. You'll see that virtually all of what you mentioned are things that on a bipartisan basis this organization has gotten behind. We are tired of the ideologues in both parties. We're looking for practical solutions. As you said, many of these initiatives were initiatives, we went to Republican and Democratic think tanks. And we said, what are the things that could put people back to work, millions of people back to work? And we came up with this set of initiatives, and they dovetail quite perfectly with the issues that you've raised. We will be there standing with you, standing with both Republican and Democratic leaders who want to put the nation first. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah. And folks, lunch will begin in just a moment. I've got to get moving to the National Journal real quick, but lunch will begin just right now.